All right, thank you for coming to our presentation today. We will be focusing on ways to improve your team dynamic by analyzing the 5 dysfunctions of a team and how they relate back to your team. Then we're going to introduce tools to help you improve your team and minimize your dysfunction. And lastly, we're going to create goals to gauge your progress overall. I'm now going to turn the time over to Regan, who is going to cover trust.
Thanks for that, Holly. So the first and foremost thing that I think about when teams aren't getting along as they should is the importance of trust. So trust, when you have trust, it leads to productive conflict. Once people feel their ideas have been heard through conflict, it leads to commitment. Once individuals are committed, they create their own personal and peer-to-peer accountability. All this leads to results. But you have to have the first tier of trust to move the needle on any of these other pillars. So you have to build that level foundation with trust. So on the next slide, one thing I think about with trust too is that you have to consistently work at it. So it's really easy to think, oh, my team, we know each other, we trust each other, and then you forget. But if you're not regularly working on building trust as a leader or as a teammate, then there's going to be a lot of other downfalls that will come about. And then on the next slide here, there's 2 types of trust. So there's predictive-based and vulnerability-based trust. The predictive, often it can come first. There's 4 components. There's credibility, integrity, intentions, and capabilities that lead to results. Predictive is often you just know how someone will act in a situation. Next is the vulnerability, though. That is harder to obtain and one that if you don't really try for it, it often doesn't come about. And that vulnerability-based trust is being open, exposed, transparent, having accessibility, realness, and authenticity. So just just being vulnerable with those around you. And so on just the one last slide here regarding trust. So at their core, teams, they are about relationships. So the leader, you, Joe, or any other leaders working at the company, it is up to the leaders to really create a safety net around the employees so that way they feel they can be open with each other. So that way you know how someone will react, but you'll also know what that person might be struggling with or what you can do to help build each other up. So have that connection moving forward. So now I'm going to let Cody talk a little bit more about conflict.
So like Rian stated, kind of the base of all this does come down to trust. Based on the interview we conducted with you, we feel like a lot of the very important things that need to be discussed among the group in relation to conflict are being overlooked and they're not being discussed. Some of the issues there lie within vulnerability-based trust, healthy productive conflict, and strong communication among one another. Like you stated in your interview with us, your team often feels like meetings are unproductive and feels like they stretch on. And like you explained with us, you are not a person who likes conflict and you would rather avoid that if possible. By increasing and focusing on healthy conflict and creating conflict norms, you can create a healthy environment that will allow for a healthy conflict and better trust among your team. So to do that, we need to master healthy conflict. And to master healthy conflict, it really comes down to being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Conflict is really taught by leaders and teachers. It comes from those individuals being vulnerable and being able to be open with their team. This will allow to create unfiltered, passionate debates among one another, and it will allow your team to grow exponentially and have that positive conflict that's needed for your success among your team. To do that, you have to put personal fears aside. You cannot focus. I mean, you have to make sure that the conflict that is being had is not personal. And it's very important to create conflict norms among your group. To do that, we need to focus on the issues at hand. Like you stated, you would rather, you care too much is what you stated to us in your interview. You care too much and you do not like to have conflict among your coworkers. So those meetings that we discussed, if you focus primarily on the main issue, we believe that that will be very beneficial. And also it needs to be said that you need to identify one individual among your group to create conflict mining and allow your team to really understand each other. Go around the table, ask each individual how they feel about the situation, what their thoughts are, and what they believe may be able to improve among the goal you're going for. So we believe by doing those two things, conflict will be healthy among your group and you'll be able to be more successful. Next, we're going to move on to commitment.
All right, so looking at the current assessments that you sent to us, it looks like your commitment was 3.19 out of 5, which is considered low. Some of the problems arise due to the disconnection between newer and older members, as you stated. However, there seems to be quite a bit of conflict between Mark and the rest of the team players due to his arrogant attitude, this disassociation of himself with the other team members, which make other members think that he is not committed to the company at all. But it could be said that Mark does not want to agree to anything, or he has his own ideas in place. One of the best methods for improving commitment would have all the leaders create a team list and show all the decisions to the group. After listing all these ideas on a whiteboard, the team leader will write each decision down and let everyone review them. This will allow for the members to express their ideas, which could help benefit the company overall. By including the ideas from newer members and more experienced team members, this will allow everyone to feel valued as their ideas are heard and valued. This will introduce a higher acceptance of buy-ins, which is the honest emotional support for any idea. This allows for the members to express their opinion, even if they do not agree with the results. After the decision has been made, the leader needs to ensure that there's clarity for the team and communicate the decision with the rest of the organization within 24 to 48 hours. This is so that the members can understand their goals and their part to help achieve the thematic goal, which is to increase revenue by a certain percentage. If everyone's ideas are not heard, this will lead to more conflict. However, Joe, you stated you are not a man that likes conflict. However, you do need to understand that by having healthy conflict during these brief debriefing periods, these can help the team members express their own ideas and opinions so that they feel valued by the company. By accepting these ideas, each member feels that they are heard, which allows for a higher chance of not only buy-ins, but full commitment. Now I will pass it to Lauren to talk about accountability.
Thank you. So based on our interview with you, we have found a large need for peer-to-peer accountability. Peer pressure is the greatest ally for your team. Peer pressure accountability is found to be more productive and impactful than if the accountability is only coming from you as the leader. Now, that being said, a leader also needs to hold others accountable to create an environment and showcase an environment that encourages your team members and gives them permission to hold their peers accountable. Secondly, the key to having more peer-to-peer accountability is caring. Caring leads to more commitment, and when you have a commitment ahead of you, accountability becomes a product of that because you care more about the outcome. Lastly, behavioral accountability should always precede results-based accountability. Although it is easier to hold people accountable for their numbers, it is again more productive for the individual and team culture to hold behaviors and actions accountable. On the next slide, we will discuss some tools for creating positive conditions for peer-to-peer accountability. So first, you mentioned that you use report outs at each meeting to foster accountability. So we've developed some ways to improve those report outs. To prevent certain members from taking time away from others in their report outs, we have created idea of setting time limits for each person. And to allow these report outs to be concise, we thought that reporting on the 3 Ps will allow each member to have adequate time. So those Ps being progress, plans, and problems. Each member will report their finished tasks, validated items, and goals achieved. They will then discuss their plans, their tasks needing completion, and their short-term and long-term objectives. And they will also discuss the problems, any issues or blockers or anything that is preventing them from completing their current tasks. Secondly, we have come up with the idea of team rewards. This being that you will reward the team instead of rewarding a certain individual. If you are rewarding a team based on performance, they are going to care more about the outcome and are more likely to hold their other team members accountable. Some ideas we have created for team rewards is take the team to a nice dinner, take the team to a sporting event, a concert, or any additional materials, food, or other items for your annual Christmas party that you mentioned important to your company. These are just some suggestions, and any team rewards can be applied here. Now Scott will cover the results.
Hey, thank you, Lauren. And to kind of go off of what Lauren just said about how accountability creates outcomes, well, the next thing we'll talk about is getting results. And your team scored low on results, about 3.04 out of 5. And the main problem with results, as evidenced by our conversation and through the surveys results of your team, is the struggle of individual members to place the needs of the team above their own. Egos are often the driving force and not teamwork. Therefore, team results or the actual output of the team or what things the team is actually trying to accomplish, what the end goal is, don't matter as much. So to address this issue, we'd like to introduce a scoreboard that would focus team attention around results. The scoreboard would be a highly visible representation of the goals and problems faced by the team. This will involve numbers, and I'm going to list 3 metrics that we can, and we can add more as the need might arise in the future. One metric could be the completion of projects, such as the writing of the program by Jim, and a measurement of either the amount of time lapsed to meet the goal or the amount of time that it's past due could be the metric we use for that measurement. And that might help both Jim and his team members hold each other accountable and get a timely completion. Another scoreboard item might be rating how well opinions are discussed, as we heard about conflict, the importance of it, and how well that's debated, and all members have an opportunity to be heard. This can be done through the survey results after each meeting. And there should also be a metric that keeps you in line with your thematic goal of making sure the financial goals are on track, and we can have that highly visible in the scoreboard. In each meeting, the scoreboard should be discussed to gauge how well the team is rallying around what is most important. More time should be spent in the areas that are doing the worst. So if one of these areas is doing really poorly, you should spend the majority of the time in that area. And it should be placed in highly visible areas, workstations, emails, posted on walls, so that people can't miss it. And with a stronger focus on results, the team will begin to focus on holding each other accountable, committing to teamwork, engaging in productive conflict, since the results actually matter, and ultimately trusting each other to work in the best interest of the company. Now I'll throw it back to Holly for the discussion on the handout.
So we've attached the handout that we're going to give you. These are our recommendations and tools that we believe will best benefit your team in order to work on your trust, conflict, and commitment to increase your accountability and results. We've also included a suggestion for a scoreboard. This is not something that you have to take literally. You can just take these suggestions and then take them back to your team and move forward from there based on what your team agrees upon. We're so grateful that you were willing to listen to us today and hear out our suggestions. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask away.